Welcome back to Change Ed.
No, it doesn't sound right.
I got 3 backseat drivers that are helping me out with our intro.
It sounds like you're in a cave or something.
Can you just get like a foot away? Like here?
Can't you get a little closer to the mic and talk like a normal person?
La, 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 la.
Hi.
Hey. See how she turned it on? She was like, hey.
Yeah.
Turns back to the podcast.
Why am I nicer to everyone else? Because I see you guys on
She's gritting her teeth. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Did you ask that question?
She's talking like this.
Okay, we're done here.
Welcome back to Change Ed.
Change it.
The #1 podcast, which will be verified by our guest in all of Pennsylvania for all things educational, especially the in-between science. I'm your host, Andrew Kuhn, education consultant from Montgomery County Intermediate, unit number 23. And here with me,
Patrice Semichek, also the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit 23.
And Tony Marabito, CLIU 21. We're adding numbers. SDF.
Oh, I'm an EC.
okay, well, we are in education, so we have lots of acronyms. I appreciate you all using your acronyms. We have here with us the one, the only, Dr. Scott McDonald from Penn State. Do you want to be identified that way? From
Sure.
in between science? How do you want to be?
I'd like to be identified however you'd like to identify.
All right.
Oh boy.
So
Wow.
I'm here to
That leaves it wide
dangerous.
open.
Well, I want to tell you, I'm really happy to have Uncle Scott here on
Yeah.
the show with us.
Gather around the microphone, kids.
Yeah.
Uncle Scott's going to tell you a story.
Never mind. He's not my uncle. I cancel. We're very excited to be here at P&C 2025.
What does Pete and C mean?
It means the Pennsylvania Educational Technology Expo and Conference.
Yeah.
You have to say conference twice when you say the whole thing.
I don't think so.
Conference.
Tony
No?
says no.
Okay.
Tony has spoken.
And Scott is a part of the conference in the capacity that we're here in the lodge, but we're also over in the hotel. In the hotel, they have summits that are going on throughout the day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And Scott is the keynote for the Steels Summit.
Correct.
And as far as I understand, this is your first day really talking about Steels, interacting with it. This is all new to you.
Today.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. On my way in this morning, I looked it up on the internet and I
Right.
found out that there's this thing that's called the Steele Standards. I don't know what it stands for, but I hear science is in there
Yeah. It's good.
somewhere. Yeah.
And so your research brought you to like a takeaway.
Do we want to know who he is first?
Yeah,
He's just
without a
this
doubt.
rando giving a keynote?
I said it was Uncle Scott. I feel like that was established.
That, right.
That's my
bad.
actual title.
You know, it's got to be great if you would share. Tell the Change Ed Nation.
I'm
who
going to
you
talk
are.
to Patrice.
Thank
I can't
you.
wait for the editing of this one.
Everybody does. They're
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
like 2 minutes
Yeah.
in. Nope, we're over here now.
No, I don't need any more of that.
Mm-mm.
So, Patrice.
Scott, Uncle Scott.
Thanks. I am science education faculty at Penn State University, which basically means I teach people how to teach science.
That's a fun
Mostly
job.
secondary students. So they're going to be certified grades 7 through 12 in all areas of science. And then I also do research on science teaching. So I research a pedagogy called ambitious science teaching, which has been around for a while. And I've been doing work with those folks for a long time. And basically, I study how teachers learn how to teach kids science. And then I also study how kids can use data visualizations and simulations and other technology tools to learn science, specifically geoscience. So,
Wow.
yeah, look at that.
We're way cooler than what we do.
Yes.
We just
It
take what you
just sounds cool.
find and tell everybody about it.
Huge
Yeah.
fan of ambitious science teaching because I use the website all the time for teachers as a model. There's some great videos on there as far as what it's supposed to look like in the classroom or what it can look like in the classroom. Has been a great resource for everything that we do at IU 21.
Yeah, they did. They just rebuilt the website. I think it was last year. So it really has improved
There's a lot there.
and there's
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, it's really good.
How do you view ambitious science teaching? Do you see it as a resource or kind of the scientific Bible? Like this is what we should all be looking to?
I mean, I guess, well, I tend not to like static answers to things. So I don't think it's a permanent Bible-like document. I mean, even now, there have been some folks that have published stuff building on that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's critical and cultural ambitious science teaching.
Okay.
There's also a justice-oriented ambitious science teaching. So there are other sort of variants
That's
that are
cool.
out there that people are working on. But I guess the way I think about it is, well, if we think about the Steele Standards, which I just learned about this morning, there's 3 parts to it. And one of the parts is in each standard is a a science and engineering practice. And so that's a thing that kids should be doing in classrooms when they're doing science. So they shouldn't be just sitting and listening. They should be doing stuff. And so those science and engineering practices are what they should be doing. And then ambitious science teaching is sort of a way to describe what teachers should be doing so that they have a classroom that kids are doing what they should be doing. So that's sort of the way I think about it. Is it's just a way of describing teaching practice that will hopefully lead to the kind of stuff we want to see in science classroom.
With this new shift to the steel standards in Pennsylvania and everything that comes with it, what are you most excited about to see in the classroom and to see come out of all of your work?
That's sort of what I'm talking about today in the keynote, but I think
it's a good
question. No, I'll talk about it because, nobody's going to listen to this podcast. Maybe right. I could stop the sentence there, but nobody's going to listen to this podcast.
People listen for Tony and I. Did they ignore the Andrew parts?
No, I think you guys are a more successful podcast than my In Between Science.
In between science.
So, the thing I'm most excited about is I hope that teachers see this as an opportunity to change the way they teach.
Yeah.
Because I think the content, like what they call the disciplinary core ideas, like the content didn't really change. If anything, it got a little more sort of organized under big ideas and less a bunch of little details. The impact on what people are actually expected to know, like what kids are supposed to know, didn't really change. It got a little better organized. It got a little more grouped into big ideas. But so the big change really is like, what should classrooms look like? I'd love to see kids talking a lot more in class to each other about science ideas. Like that's really, for me, what the big shift should be, is away from the teacher talking to the kids and instead the kids talking to each other and the teacher being there to help.
So how are you helping teachers navigate away from, especially in the secondary world, where it's been more of a stand and deliver, here's the procedure you have to follow. Yeah. How are you helping teachers move away from that? Because it could be a little uncomfortable if they're not used to it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know if I have a great answer for it, actually, because I do think one of the challenges is, like to your point, we're really asking them to sort of become different people in a way. Yeah. And that's really hard because we're asking them to not only change the way they teach, but in some sense, retrospectively look back at the way they have taught and maybe not feel as great about it as they did. I don't think that's necessary. I think we're all learning and we're all growing. And if we can see ourselves that way and say, look, that may not have been the way I wanted to teach now that I know differently, but at that point I was doing a good job in the framework of what I knew.
Right.
But that's a hard shift. The more years you've been teaching, the harder the shift it is.
For sure.
So, a lot of it is recognizing it's going to be a slow process and recognizing a lot of it is going to be having conversations with people where they get to think about what they value, what they care about, what they're trying to accomplish. And hopefully that leads them to saying, maybe I'm ready for a new thing, a new way of doing things.
One of the things that we got from you through the parse work and just in conversations with you was the book, How Minds Change. And it really shifted how Andrew and I work. Well, Andrew doesn't really work, but it shifted how we do things.
How I show up to work. Yeah. It changed how I show up.
I think you might have listened to it.
Yeah. That sounds right.
That tracks. See, Uncle Scott knows me.
But do you find having something like that in terms of, it's really just a mindset shift?
Yeah.
When it comes to, especially already in service teachers as opposed to pre-service teachers, but we teach the way we were taught mostly. So it's still undoing a lot there. But do you find that understanding more about how adults learn is helpful in shifting some of those mindsets?
Yeah, I think so. I won't explicitly mention that book today, but it is, it's been important to my thinking too about, the core piece of that, what he basically says is, look, you can't change somebody's mind by arguing them into it. That you have to let them change their own mind by helping them think through what they believe. And I think that has helped me frame that shift a little differently.
In the same summer, we read David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, and all of his books are really great. But those two paired together were like eye-opening and very informative in how we do most of our work, right?
So, yeah, absolutely. To the point where we're reading at the same time and they started to almost blend together, right? Like, was this story from here or here? We had to try and keep it straight. So it was a good supplement as well. Like it really supported that mindset.
Because originally the work felt Herculean in the task, right? Like we had to, the mindset shift for teachers felt very big. But the more we're doing it and the more we're having conversations with people, they're actually pretty open to shifting what they're doing because it hasn't been working as well as they had wanted it to in the past. So,
and we really seeing these shifts and knowing these shifts are, I think a lot of them are subtle but significant. We tried to embrace that as well with our practice, knowing how minds change, that let's just expose you to things over time and continuing having conversations, not trying to convince, but expose was really the goal.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea that it's a long game. I mean, when we design professional learning, we tend to think like, okay, I've got 3 days and I'm going to accomplish X by the end of 3 days. And the truth is you're probably not going to. What you're going to do is start a conversation for them. There's
a rumble at the coffee line. They're just,
it's really bad.
True Pete and
it's really bad.
True Pete and Steve passes
quickly.
Well, we're going to keep going.
Okay.
I hope they're okay.
We're going to muddle through. Well, we don't care. There's lots of people here. So if you don't make it, that's part of the Pete and C experience.
All these selfies people are taking with us.
Only the strong survive.
Oh my God. Who would have thought poster sessions?
You should add that to your keynote today.
Yeah.
So glad to be at the hotel where they're way more civilized.
That's right.
Oh, man.
Forgot that question.
When we think about three-dimensional learning, within the 3 dimensions, in our work, I'm generalizing, but we find that teachers can kind of understand disciplinary core ideas and they get the idea of the science and engineering practices, right? Hands-on, they're doing the science.
Yeah.
What do you see the value of the cross-cutting concepts in this? Again, for us, it seems to be like this is the core part of like, this is the big shift, is shifting into creating thinkers that they have this skill set.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think about the cross-cutting concepts as sort of like tools, right? So you have like cognitive tools. So you have practices, which are the things that you're doing. And then you've got the disciplinary core ideas, which are the things that you're working on when you're doing those things. And then you have the cross-cutting concepts, which are a set of tools that are useful across lots of areas of science that you can draw on when you're trying to do the work. So if you're trying to build a model, you can use cause and effect, which is a cross-cutting concept, to say, well, what's happening here? What's the cause? What's an effect? You can use scale as a way of thinking about, am I thinking at multiple scales at the same time? So I think the teacher can call those out because this is one of the challenges is any science environment where you're learning, multiple practices and multiple tools are being used simultaneously. So it's not a question of that. It's more of a question of which one are you going to focus and attend to. So today we're really going to focus on cause and effect. So when you guys are building your model, I really want you to be able to make specific references to one thing causing another thing in your model, right? And that doesn't mean that other things won't be there, but calling it out so that kids start to identify that this is a tool that they're already using, that they just don't have a name for. But now you can start saying, hey, anytime you're trying to do this thing, here are some tools that you can pull out of your tool belt and look at it and say, is this going to be helpful here? And if not, put it away. But sometimes those things are useful. So
we've also been working a lot on curiosity as a gateway to phenomenon.
Yeah.
Allowing permission to be curious, which I think leads naturally into the 3 dimensions where if I don't understand it or I want to know more about it, I can dive into it. And like you said, I have the tools to do that. I have practices to do that. That seems to be a big shift as well. And one of the things we hear most is the concern of time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to do all of these. I'm wondering, and I appreciate your perspective on this, is that a kind of almost a hybrid of the two of like, I know I've got to get through all of these standards and now I have to add this on. The idea of adding on versus shifting the practice.
Right.
Is that something that you're seeing? And if so, what's the conversation?
I think that's the only way to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, again, the coverage thing is frustrating to me because it's just like, well, what does coverage mean? That means you said those words in front of the kids on a day. And so now you can check it off your list. And we know that doesn't help them actually learn it. So what does coverage mean? When I've seen this kind of pedagogy happening across a whole year, where it's not just like little bits and pieces, what you see is that the kids, and especially when you see it over multiple years, the kids get used to this. And in the beginning, it's hard because they're learning how to do it and they don't really understand, what are we doing here? Like, we're just asking us questions. Like, this is science class and I'm just writing my notebook, my ideas. Like, that sounds dumb. Like, tell me the right answer so I can put that in the notebook.
Right.
And so at first it's rough and it's slow, but as they build that capacity, it speeds up. And the thing that you find, or at least I've seen happen, is kids are much better at building on their own ideas that they've had in the past because they really understand them. So when you're doing a unit about one thing that has to do with energy, and now they have an idea of what potential kinetic energy really mean, well, maybe when you're doing a unit on hurricanes and you're talking about how hurricanes form and use, sea surface temperature to drive the energy of a hurricane. Now they can start to understand that, that's just kinetic and potential energy in a different form.
Yeah.
And they actually understand it.
Yeah.
But if you're just teaching them a bunch of words here and a bunch of words there, they don't know there's any relationship between them. There's just a thing. And, getting the trash empty.
I know. Oh, wow.
Pulling out all the stops here, Pete and C for Uncle Scott. We're showing you the whole thing.
Scott.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to talk for like a little bit about, you have your own podcast?
Yeah.
And you do that with, oh my God.
He won't be a guest. You can come.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I don't feel singled out at all.
I'll be on without him. It's fine.
I was intentionally singling you out.
Not the first or last question. Just Patrice and I.
You're like, I'm glad you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Right.
It was very obvious.
Smart kid. Yeah.
So do you want to tell us in your podcast, what kinds of things are you guys talking about? More of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, basically, we talk about science teaching. We also have a technology flavor to it because Ollie is really, that's my background to some degree, but he's really still interested in that, particularly like in AI now. He's really pushing into AI a lot. So we sort of alternate who's picking the topic. So when I'm picking, it's usually about science teaching, but sometimes it's about technology. When he's picking, it's sometimes about technology and sometimes about science teaching. But yeah, basically, it's all those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and you had said, as we were starting this podcast, that you have like 239 episodes. So there's a backlog. There's a lot of things that you can dive into and go deeper and find a lot of information if you want to.
There's 176 hours of content that you can enjoy. You could just binge all that.
Yeah.
And make it your life. I'm looking specifically at you. I think this is a thing maybe you should consider.
Yeah.
Before you do another podcast,
you have some
should
things
learn
to learn.
something.
Yeah. Let's move on. Who has another question for Scott?
But I can't stop thinking about this new shift of teaching.
Yeah.
And the connection that it has with what Demetrius was talking about yesterday and his CTE experience. So it's not just getting this rote memorization of vocab words because my teacher said this today in class and I had to write it down and take notes on it.
Yeah.
But now I'm learning about these vocab words, but I'm applying it. I'm doing something with
There's
it.
meaning behind it,
Correct.
right? Like I'm not just learning vocabulary words for vocabulary words' sake.
Yes.
And I think that's where the powerful piece of the STEEL standards come in, is that if we were to cross-pollinate into other subject areas, the impact in ELA will be shifted because of the background knowledge that's now accessible because they've experienced something and attached meaning to words. So they're going to be able to do better on their comprehension assessments. Yes. I think what we do, especially in elementary world where we usually live, is we do a disservice to everybody by making science 30 minutes once a week if they get to it.
Yeah.
Because everything would be shifted. The math can be applied, the ELA can be applied, and you can leverage all this ELA time to read about some of the things that you're doing in science and math as well.
So he was talking about plumbing and gravity, but also the geometry that comes with plumbing. So by pulling all of these different ideas together and actually understanding and being able to explain or make models, the learning just is so much more impactful.
Well, but the application, we don't science as adults. We apply the science understanding to all of the things that we're doing. So I think too, in terms of making the connections in your brain, the more you do the stuff and apply the stuff, the longer it's going to stick with you. So that's why I think the CTC idea of moving towards more practical application, which is what STEELS is pushing us towards anyway, is going to transform the way that kids interact and are learners forever, hopefully.
Okay, I like that we're all looking at me.
I think that's good.
I feel like he's got good stuff to say, so you want to jump in and ruin all that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
No,
do you have anything else to
not
jump
when
in
the guest agrees with the co-host.
Does it depend on which co-host? Like if I had agreed with you, would that be okay?
I'm the host.
Oh, he's not a co-host.
He's the host.
You got the co for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
he never added the co for him.
It was voted on by the listeners.
He's got the highest microphone. He's got the most expensive
Yesterday he had the boom microphone because he needed to be important. No one voted. His mom voted.
And still didn't vote.
And she still voted for us.
She had to go buy burner phones, so it was a different IP address every time.
That's very smart.
Yeah.
Did you help her out with that?
Yeah, he bought all the burner phones and sent all the messages and said, "Love, Mom."
Yeah.
Mom, can you give them back when you're done so I can return them? I don't actually want to buy them. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, Scott, we really appreciate your time and you coming on, especially before you're keynoting for thousands of adoring fans.
Yeah, thousands or maybe just hundreds. Or maybe just dozens. Who knows?
Either way.
we appreciate you coming on and giving us the time and really your insights. We encourage our listeners to give a look and give a listen to Science in Between, because I think there's a lot of valuable information there, as we've heard and experienced from Uncle Scott. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Maybe I should have a new podcast. It's just called Uncle Scott.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be well listened
At the
to.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the fire.
Uncle
The
Scott's
coffee station.
Uncle Scott's scolding Andrew.
Yeah.
Everyone will tune in.
I mean, a lot of people would tune in for that, probably. Anybody scolding Andrew. Patrice scolding Andrew.
Yeah.
Tony scolding Andrew.
Yeah. That could be what the guest does. Each guest that comes on, I get a verbal lashing.
Yeah.
As a reminder, interact with us on Spotify through the message feature, and feel free to ask Uncle Scott any questions.
Yeah.
Not about Andrew.
Not about
It's all about Andrew.
Yeah. I don't have any answers for you about Andrew.
Mistakes were made.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, are we going to give him the second to last thought, or are we just
Oh, yeah. We would like
That's
to give you,
what Andrew does?
as a
Oh,
Family-
as host, he has a special thing here that he's going to.
Well, he likes to say second, it's a special thing, but
I
it's
see.
a
But
special
then
thing
he
for
follows it up
everyone.
with something insane too.
This
I
is
see.
a friends and family discount that we're giving you.
I see.
The second
Awesome.
to last final thought on our conversation.
Okay.
Because he has to have
So I
the
can
last
say
thought.
whatever I want.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, well, it'll be edited, but sure.
That's a lot of pressure to think about. So I would say, I think we have a real opportunity here because the standards are structured in a way that we could really change the way we think about science teaching and really do it. And maybe I'm being Pollyanna here and I'm wrong, but I think this is the closest thing we've had in my time as a science educator to really having clear guidance from the state to say you need to not just change what you teach, but how you teach. And I really hope we take advantage of that and see real change, because where I've seen it in schools, it does amazing things for kids and for teachers. Teachers have a whole new experience of teaching. They really love it again and feel connected. And so I really hope we can do that.
Andrew's gonna ruin it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew will. Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say you could just leave it, but that doesn't feel right.
No, that doesn't feel right. Scott, I want to say that as we've gone through this journey, you've been one of the people that have been very informative to us in this process and helped stretch our thinking. And I think it's important for our listeners to hear that, to understand the weight that we put into the things that you say and the conversation we have. It's developed over time for us, but also, this podcast is a representation of things that we're learning and that we're experiencing. So I just think that's important to be said, that starting to find the right word, godfather, the grandfather. No, I'm going the wrong
Who's
way
the
there.
godfather?
Move from uncle to grandfather just now.
Yeah, it's a fluid situation.
I think Godfather is probably the better fit there.
No,
So
but
Scott's the godfather now?
I don't know.
Because you said Brett Moulding was the godfather.
It's a lot of people. There's a lot of
You're
godfathers.
part two.
I'm going to start that over, right? Can we use a different analogy?
Feel
there?
free.
Yeah.
It seems like you don't really understand how families work, so maybe let's
Yeah.
take a step back.
I didn't do well in
Coming
science.
from a guy that has
so-
12 kids.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, you have served and very much, and honestly, the entire Parks team has done a great job of empowering IUs to better understand the shifts. And even when I went to my very first Parks session, before getting there, I thought, oh man, here we go. New standards. I feel like it's very much a general mindset of here we go again, right? Like we have to learn, okay, I'll move over here and I'll use these words. And it quickly became very apparent and was the impetus for really this journey that I personally have gone on, that through that experience, I'm like, yes, standards are driving the conversation, but that's not what we're actually talking about. It's this pedagogical shift. So thank you for your leadership and the fact that your podcast has been around for 5 years. It's really stood the test of time, and there's a lot for us to talk about, for us to learn. So I think we're going to wrap it up because the lights got turned off.
Yeah.
And
It's a clear signal that the podcast is over.
It's like the metaphorical hook from the
that's
stage.
right.
so thank you. Thank you very much. We look
Thanks
forward
for having
to
me.
further conversations
Yeah, thank
with
you.
Uncle Scott
With Uncle Scott.
Uncle
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott.
Around the fire.
around the fire.